Hi, everybody. Welcome to Inside Scoop with Sue. And today I'm here with Amy Morin, who is coming to us from her home on her sailboat in the Keys in Florida. And so she, as she said, she doesn't have so many windows where she is right now. It's a little dark. Amy is a psychotherapist and an author, and I think a surprise author, right? Like you weren't planning on being an author, and that happened. And right now you're about to launch a book called 13 Things Strong Kids Do. And what I love about these books is that they're very kind of manageable. Like we can get our heads around this concept that some of your other books were things that parents shouldn't do, don't do, mentally strong parents don't do. And so I wanted to look at the 13 things strong kids do and just pick a few of them and talk about what does that mean? Why did you put it on the list? And how can we as parents help our kids? So the first one was help them stop feeling sorry for themselves. That's a really big one.
It is a big one, but it's so important for kids to know bad things can happen and it's healthy to be sad. But what's not healthy is when you start to think, oh, my problems are bigger than everybody else's. There's nothing I can do about this. That's when kids sink into this sort of hopeless and helpless place, and then they don't do anything about it. And it might be over something small. Maybe your child is struggling with math, and so they think, I can't possibly pass math class. They quit doing their homework. They don't even bother paying attention in class anymore because they think there's just no way I'm ever going to get through this. Or might be a bigger problem. Maybe they are being bullied on the bus, or maybe they're struggling with something like you have a grandparent who's really sick. But if they feel sorry for themselves, then they won't ever be able to take any positive action. And of course, there's some problems that we can't solve. If your grandmother's sick, you can't fix it. You can fix a math problem, or you can learn how to stand up to a bully, or you can ask for help. But if grandma's sick, you can't fix it, but you can at least address how you feel about it. So maybe you take some action to say, okay, instead of staying in bed and not moving all day, I'm going to go outside and play for a few minutes just to see if that makes my mood better. And of course, we don't want kids to think that they have to be happy all the time, too. There's this pressure, I think, on parents these days to try to raise really happy kids. Kids don't need to be happy all the time. It's good for them to experience a wide range of emotions. But we want them to know that it's okay to be sad as long as your sadness is healthy. But when it crosses over into self-pity, that's when it becomes self-destructive.
So if you see that in your kid, what can you do as a parent to pivot, to help them like just kind of move their head over slightly and see a different alternative?
Self-pity usually comes from like exaggerating how bad things are, or from underestimating your own capabilities. So in the book, I talk about how to teach kids the difference between blue thoughts and true thoughts. And blue thoughts are the ones when kids think things like, oh, nobody ever likes me. I can't ever do anything right. These sort of absolutes and overgeneralizations. So we can teach kids, often as parents, we just want to jump in and say, oh, no, honey, that's not true. Or some people do like you, or plenty of good things happen today, too. But we're not teaching them how to do that for themselves. So we can talk about how to recognize, is that thought true or not? And to teach kids that their brains lie to them sometimes. Their brains will underestimate them. It will tell them that they can't possibly cope. So to have a conversation of maybe, what would you say to your friend who had this problem? Most kids will be way kinder to a friend. They're like, well, if my friend had this problem, I'd say, just try again, or you'll do better next time. Or I'd point out that, yeah, some people do like you. They can just give themselves the same advice they give to a friend. It can solve a lot of problems. It teaches them to practice more self-compassion, which can be one of the antidotes to self-pity.
I love that. Also, because if you try to help your kids, they don't believe you anyway. If you say, oh, you're beautiful, or you're this, or you're that, to try to debunk whatever they're feeling, they don't ever believe you.
Right. And we don't want them to just rely on us for that reassurance. We want them to know that they can tell themselves that too, so that when we're not there to try to give them reassurance, even if they're not going to believe it, we want them to know, no, I can talk to myself in a kind way, and that's helpful too.
And it's so concrete to say, what would you tell a friend? That's
right.
So concrete.
And I guarantee almost all kids can come up with something. Well, I'd tell Billy it's not a big deal, you know, and if they just give themselves that same advice, then it will do them a world of good.
Okay, that's great. The next one, I mean, boy, do we all want to know this one. They need to know when to say no.
Yeah, some parents think my kid says no too much already. I tell him, do your homework. He says no. But the truth is, we want kids to speak up at appropriate times so that when their friend says to them, can I cheat off your paper? We want them to be able to say no. Or we don't want them to think just because they get invited to somebody's house, if they don't want to go, it's okay to say no, thank you. Because so many kids just get caught up into thinking that they have to do anything and everything, or they have this fear of missing out. So they get themselves in situations and they think, I didn't actually even want to do this in the first place, but I went along with the crowd. We want them to know it's okay to sit back for a minute and think, do I actually want to do this? And if I don't, how do I say no in a way that shows self-respect? And for kids to know that when they respect themselves, other people will respect them too.
Okay, so how do I do that as a parent? How do I, because truthfully, we all have times where we want to tell them, stop saying no. So
Right.
now how do we make that subtle distinction between, which, for kids, it's really subtle. Like, I totally want you to use your voice and say no outside of the house.
Right. Right. So I think it's all about helping them practice. So when they say yes to something, a friend says that they want to come over. Or if you have a kid who comes to you and says, Mom, say no because somebody wants me to do this, but I don't want to do it, but I don't want to be the one to say no. It's a great opportunity to sit and problem solve with them. What can you say? How can you say it? What's your fear in saying no? Are you afraid the kids will be mad at you? Are you afraid that they won't like you? Just having those open conversations with kids and then helping them practice. How do you deliver a polite no that you can say no, thank you? And you might not need a lengthy excuse. You might not need to give them a big reason why you don't want to do this. Instead, you can just say no, and that's okay.
We actually talked about this recently, like being the fall person. So telling our kids that they can use us as the excuse.
And I think sometimes that's okay. I think for kids who say, I'm at a party and older kids and they think, all right, I need to get out of here. This isn't the best place to be, but it's really hard for me to say, guys, I'm not comfortable. They can say, oh, my mom called and said I have to come home. That's way easier to say. So I think in some cases that's an okay thing to do, is to teach kids that they can use mom or dad as the fall guy. But in other situations, it's okay to just speak up and say, no, thank you as well.
All right, that one seems really hard to me, but that's great advice. Also, they own their mistakes.
Of course, nobody wants to get in trouble. So kids often learn to hide their mistakes. Mistakes are embarrassing. We don't want to get yelled at. We don't want people to judge us. So it becomes much easier to just hide them, sweep them under the rug. So when your child forgets their homework at school, they might be really quick to say, well, I didn't have any homework tonight. Or when they start falling behind in the subject, they might not want to come forth and tell you because that's scary. You might get mad. You'll make them do the work. They don't know how to do it. So we just want to teach kids, when you mess up, that's okay. And for us as parents, to let kids mess up. And then when they mess up, not to make a big deal out of it, but to say, what are you going to do about it now? Because as parents, we often, if they spill the milk, we want to yell at them for like, what? How could you be so careless? Well, instead, we want to talk about how are you going to clean this up? So that kids know, all right, we all make mistakes. And rather than worrying about this harsh punishment they're going to get for messing up, we want them to know that they can put their energy into fixing it and addressing it.
Well, so that one, to me, it's like, as a parent, I get caught up in the fact that they lied to me.
Yeah.
When I find out that there was homework and they didn't do it, but they told me they were done with their homework or whatever it is. And your side of that story doesn't allow for my reaction. I'm not that it doesn't allow, but it's not taking into account, how do I get over my reaction of the lie to get to the, like, how do we be constructive here?
Yeah. So I think ongoing conversations about honesty, that I want to trust you, but I need you to be honest when you tell me something. And when you mess up, we'll work on it together, but we're on the same team, that I'm not working against you. My goal is for you to succeed as well, but I can't help you succeed unless I know what's going on. So I need you to tell me the truth, and then we'll work on it together. If you need some help fixing a problem, you need some help figuring out your homework, we'll work on that, but I can't help you unless we know the truth. So I would just say having ongoing conversations about the importance of honesty, and then talking about taking responsibility. When somebody messes up and they own it, absolutely praise them. Like, gosh, that must have been so hard to admit that just happened, but I'm so proud of you for telling me about that. When we make the focus on honesty and we really praise them for being honest, even when it's hard, kids then get the message of, okay, this is really hard. Because sometimes I think we send them the message of, well, you should have just told me the truth from the beginning. And we don't acknowledge how tough that is sometimes to come forward and say, I messed up.
So praising when they do tell the truth, and also like the way to let them see that mistakes aren't the end of the story is to be there and be supportive when they make that mistake.
Right. And then to say, okay, what are we going to do from here when they mess up? So when they do,
those are not simple things to do. I mean,
they're not.
You put them out there like, the formula is, and it sounds so easy, but I can just picture in my mind, my reaction not quite going there.
And that's okay too. As parents, when we mess up or we raise our voice or we say something, out of a reaction, those are opportunities too. We don't want our kids to think we're perfect or we're completely, robotic and unemotional and we handle everything calm, cool, and collective. But to then have a conversation later about, I messed up. I raised my voice. I freaked out. I said something I shouldn't have, or I really focused on the fact that you did this instead of really focusing on the fact that you did X, Y, and Z. So I think those are all teachable moments. And when we mess up, we have plenty of opportunities to then say, I'm working on this as well.
I would say we have plenty of opportunities when we mess up also.
Yeah,
because we mess up all the time.
Absolutely. None of us are perfect.
Yeah. Okay. Last one about the kids part. And I think this is hard for people in general, not just kids, but a beautiful thing to try to work at. They celebrate other people's successes.
And this one is tough. When your friend gets a better grade than you did, or there's a couple kids on the team that score all the points and you don't get any, it's really tough to be happy for them. And it's easy for kids to fall into the trap of being like, well, they only scored points because their dad's the coach, or they are a ball hog, or we come up with excuses, or so-and-so must have cheated on that test, or it comes easy to her. We want kids to know that just because somebody else does well, it doesn't mean that they're not doing well, that they don't need to compare themselves to everybody around them. Obviously, this one's tough too. It's tough for adults. When we see other people winning in life, sometimes we think that it takes it away from us. But for kids to know, we want to be good people. We want to be good friends. We want to be cheerleaders to other people. And that when we do that, it doesn't mean that we're not going to succeed. It just means that we can be gracious to other people who are winning. And of course, we want them to cheer us on when we're doing well too. But when you really create a support system and you get on the same team as other people and you're cheering them on, life becomes so much easier. And for kids to not feel like they have to get distracted by who's getting an A+, because even if they got a C, it doesn't matter what the kid next to you got. It matters, how do you compare yourself to how you did last week or how you did last month? How do you keep growing as a person? And other kids might have skills and tools and strategies you can learn from, but they're not your direct competition.
So if let's say two kids are trying out for the lead in a play and one of them gets it, one of them doesn't, only one's going to get it, right? So can I play the part of somebody who is being gracious, and will it eventually, because it's hard to change your visceral reaction, right? So you're disappointed, you're not cheering them on at the moment, but can we encourage our kids to react the right way, even though they don't feel that way? And then eventually, does that follow?
Yeah, we can let them know. You can say, great job on getting the part in the play. And you can be sad at the same time that you didn't get it. Because I think for kids, they sometimes think, I'll have to be happy. I'm not happy. I didn't get the part. We want them to know, no, you can be really sad that you didn't get it and still say congratulations to the person who did. And those feelings sometimes feel like they're conflicting. So we think you can only be happy or sad. No, you can be both at the same time. But yeah, sometimes if they just, they can act gracious, even if they don't necessarily feel it. And then when you say to somebody, great job today, the person smiles, maybe you have a conversation, it will probably boost your mood and you'll feel better anyway. But I'm a big fan of saying sometimes you have to change your behavior first and the feelings will follow.
Yeah, because like the feelings, that's hard to kind of squelch and say, I'm not going to feel this. But doing the right thing is something that we can all do. So,
yes. And for kids to know the difference between feelings and behavior. Like, it's okay to be angry, but it's not okay to throw something. It's okay to feel sad, but you can't scream and cry in the middle of the grocery store.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to your 13 things mentally strong parents don't do. And one of them is all of this is so hard. It's also aspirational. You can keep working on it even into your adulthood.
Yes.
Don't feel responsible for your child's emotions.
This is a tough one because nobody wants to see their kids upset. When your kids are sad, when they're anxious, when they're angry, we want to calm them down. We want to cheer them up. We want to help them feel better. But we need to let kids feel those feelings. We know from research that most kids say, yeah, I was academically prepared for college, but emotionally, I was not ready at all for life after high school. They get out of the house and they don't know what to do once they get a bad grade on a test, or they have a fight with their roommate, or they start to struggle, because they've never had to experience those emotions on their own. So we're doing them a disservice when we jump in and shield them, or we take responsibility when we say, okay, let's go out for ice cream. We don't teach them like, hey, you had a bad day, here's what you can do to feel better. We need kids to know that they have skills, tools, strategies that they can use to take responsibility for their own emotions.
Well, I love your example of college, because tonight we have a college series going on right now, 8 weeks. And tonight we have Wendy Mogul and Julie Lithcott-Hames both talking about exactly that. And so I'm going to put the link here. If you guys who are listening, you can still sign up and get the last 8 weeks. And tonight is a really big one with Wendy Mogul and Julie Lithcott-Hames, 2 rock stars.
Yeah, those are great people to have on your show.
Yeah. Okay, so last question for you, and it ties into what you already talked about in terms of the kid book, which is don't prevent your child from making mistakes. And we have grown up, although we're starting to see the damage it caused, with the belief that our role was to kind of, jump in front of them before they could experience anything terrible. And so this don't prevent your child from making mistakes is it's like having to rethink the culture we were raising our kids in up until this point.
That's just it. I think, years ago, parents kind of let kids fend for themselves. And then the next generation thought, no, my job is to really shield my kids from a lot of that stuff. But then we went a little too far. The pendulum swung over here and we thought, no, my job is to make sure my kids don't experience any problems. I'm going to step in. If they forget their soccer cleats, I'm going to run up to the school and deliver them. If they are struggling with their homework, I'm going to sit down next to them and correct all their papers before they hand it in. So we need kids to know that it's okay to make mistakes, but the only way that they're going to be able to learn that lesson is if we step back and allow them to do it. And I know how painful it is when you're sitting across the room and your child's struggling, and if you stepped in, you could fix it in about 30 seconds, but they might spend 2 hours working on this project. But sometimes you just have to bite your tongue and say, okay. Obviously, if they're about to jump off a cliff, we're going to step in and say, yeah, no, don't do that. But those little mistakes along the way, to allow them to make them, it's really important. And then you have so many teachable moments and opportunities to teach them. How do you respond to a mistake? How do you bounce back from failure? How do you deal with the feelings that come up when you mess up? You're embarrassed, you're disappointed, you're angry, you're sad, whatever it is. But for kids to know it's okay to mess up, and we all have choices in how we respond to those mistakes.
Yeah, I think the biggest pivot is to try to see it as an opportunity instead of a mistake. And that's just really such a mind shift. And I'm just going to tell you that, share what Marcy said, that it is such a balance. Yeah, 100%. And one that probably we're always recalibrating, like you overcorrect on both sides and you need to constantly be recalibrating. Okay, any last words for us?
Yeah, I think, well, as you say, all of these things are difficult. It's meant to be difficult, but it's all doable. So to build mental strength, to model it for your kids, to incorporate it into your daily life, and to teach your kids that there's lots of things they can do every single day to grow and become stronger and take steps to reaching their greatest potential.
Amy Morin, thank you so much for being here with us from your boat. Have a great day.
Thank you. You as well.